It's always a delight to know that you're there with us already on the program Politics Today on independent television and radio. With yours sincerely, Sonny Duke Okosun. Today on the program, we look at the APC congresses in retrospect, because we know the national convention of the party is just around the corner, and of course that is supposed to throw up new leadership at the national level for the party. And then, of course, a couple of other issues along the way in the build-up to 2019 will also take our attention today on the program. I've got with me in the studio Comrade Austin Osakwe, Executive Director of Foundation for Good Governance and Social Change. Many thanks for joining us, Comrade.
Thank you very much. Good morning, viewers and listeners on radio.
We're expecting Barrister Washington Osifo to also join this discussion. I'm sure he'll be here any moment from now. Well, let's begin from the very beginning, but just before that, to let you know that you can watch the program live from any part of the world via our website, www.itvradionnigeria.com. It's customary for us to also open our studio line so you can call and be part of the discussion. Of course, the appropriate time, that also will be opened. Well, the ruling party has held its World and Local Government Congress, and then, of course, the State Congress. For the State Congress, what came out from some of the reports on it were parallel congresses in several states of the Federation. This is normal politicking. What do you think?
Well, for the Nigerian situation, yes. An internal party arrangement that is geared towards throwing up representatives for different levels of elections, and also setting up management structures for the ward, local government, and state levels ordinarily should be taken for granted as something that will be peaceful, orderly, and fair. But in Nigeria, we know that that's usually not the case. What we saw in the world, local government, and state congresses was an exhibition of inability of the political class to abide by even the rules that they have set up for themselves. What we have are parallel congresses in several of the states across the Federation. A situation even acknowledged by the party itself. So we're not saying something that the party already has not said. These parallel congresses are worrisome. They are worrisome first because it's an internal party thing. Secondly, because it also shows that we are not maturing as far as politics and politicking are concerned. We don't seem to be growing. We don't seem to be developing. We don't seem to be progressing along the lines of fairness, of equity, and the capacity of a political party to manage its internal affairs. Of course, we know in human affairs there will be conflicts, but that's the essence of a democracy, that we are able to apply existing rules in being fair to all, in being equitable to resolve these conflicts. If that wasn't done, then of course it's a failure on the part of leadership within the party. But I dare to say that it's even more so because usually a party in power tends to give the impression to its membership that they would remain in power. So the struggle for position, the struggle to represent that party becomes intense. In some states, it is taken for granted that the hurdle before you to ascend to positions of power, elective positions, albeit, is to just get your party nod, get your party ticket, forget about the general election. The general election will be a walkover. When a political party gives this impression to its membership, then it heightens tension within the party and tends to set up a situation where they throw norms to the winds, they throw rules and regulations to the dustbin, and engage in all kinds of what today in Nigeria is called political ruffle.
Which is more complex tasking? Is it the intra-party squabbles in terms of the congresses, the elections, or the main election? Which is more complex, difficult for an aspirant or even a candidate, as it were?
Again, in the ideal situation, the intra-party situation ought to be simpler, because the party has rules. The party is able to resolve its internal differences. Also, the frame of competition is narrower. Everybody within the party knows everybody. The guidelines are clear. So from the beginning, the structures in place are geared towards throwing up those who will represent the party. So it is the ability to identify strengths and weaknesses.
Okay.
Okay? But if you have godfathers within the party, and you have a process of anointing of candidates, not based on capacity, but based on the interests of these godfathers who own the party and fund the party, then it becomes a different ballgame. So in the Nigerian situation, the intra-party squabbles appear to be even more debilitating for the political process and our polity than the inter-party. In recent times, we have had elections in this country that have been devoid of so much violence, as we have seen in our recent history. We have also seen elections that many have acclaimed as being close to fair, even though they may not be free. So inter-party elections are becoming better, and we must give kudos here to INEC's deliberate effort to rise above the waters. And I think they're also working more in that regard. They are reaching out to stakeholders to see how they can put that in place. I am afraid that we may get to a point where we'll be calling on INEC or a similar body to begin to conduct intra-party elections. Because the parties are not getting it right in their primaries. They are not. In a state like Edo, for instance, where they announced what they call consensus. It ought to be good, except that people are asking whether peace of the graveyard is actually peace. If the consensus does not throw up enmity within the party, if there are no muted cries that even though they say consensus, our mouths were closed, then it will be okay. But if we can have consensus, as we had in Edo, and therefore forestall violence, maybe that's the place to start. But in very many of the states, we can't say that. There were violence, there were parallel congresses, there were even killings. And that is not good for democracy, and it's not good for...
What is the implications of all of these for the ruling party as we get closer to 2019 elections? Someone said yesterday on our new program on satellite, Road to 2019, that those who felt, disappointed with the outcome of the congresses are most likely not going to leave the party, because this for them is better to be here and maybe try to get into one thing or the other than move and be an outsider.
There may be a point in there, but I think it's an oversimplification. Don't forget, it's not just about the APC. The history of our politics is such that in the build-up to elections, the ultimate prize is very attractive, and people are doing all they can to be there. So, yes, you are going to have fallouts, particularly so for the APC, which was formed as an agglomeration of several independent groupings. We had the ANPP, for instance. We had the CPC. We had the ACN. We had what they call the new PDP then. We had some faction of ABGA and so on, coming together to establish the APC. Even after several years in the saddle in government, recent revelations will reveal that even though we have APC, the original groupings that formed the APC appears to still be identifying.
So it's a heterogeneous political party.
Yeah, so you have these structures still being there. You now hear that CPC
faction or wing.
We have been marginalized.
Okay.
The new PDP wrote a petition to the APC leadership and indeed the president, giving them an ultimatum to redress the perceived marginalization. So there will be fallouts. Some people will go, some will remain. Don't also forget that the movement of people out of a party are directly proportional to the perceived level of performance of that party in power, which strengthens the opposition. The question of whether people will go and how many will leave the party in the build-up to election will depend on how strong the opposition is perceived as we get along. Okay. If a party is very comfortable, a party has so many things to point at as achievements in government, then people will be asking themselves, if I leave, where am I going to? But as the build-up to the election goes, there appears to be more conviction outside the party and outside the government that it is possible to beat this government. It's possible to beat this party in the coming elections. Once that impression grows, the tendency is that more people will move out of the party. And for the party, that will not be good for them. But for Nigerians who are hoping for a change in government, a retooling of the wheels of governance, and an opportunity for a breath of fresh air for overall good of the people, we'll be happy.
If you just join us, you're watching Politics Today on independent television, and if you're listening on radio, we thank you for being a part of the program. We just started off, we're looking at the just concluded state congresses of the ruling party in retrospect against the background of some of the fallouts, majorly being that there were parallel congresses held in several states of the Federation. But like they say, one thing that is permanent in politics is interest. Maybe at some point there will be a meeting point among those who felt disenfranchised or disappointed or are not comfortable with the outcome, and then somehow they resolve their differences. Now, in the course of your analysis, you talked about the ultimatum written by the NPDP, the new PDP as it were.
Yes.
That seems to have dissolved into thin air. That probably explains why I said a while ago that even those who are disappointed with the way things are may just be comfortable to remain in the party, in the polity, because this is like a safety net right now.
We can't conclude that it has dissolved into thin air.
I said that because they gave an ultimatum, the ultimatum expired, and nothing seems to have been heard about...
That's the nature of politicking. If an ultimatum is given and people rubbish the ultimatum and say it doesn't matter, the people will go back in and begin to look for alternatives. The fact that there appears to be, it's like a pot of porridge that has left the fire and is there, and you think that you can put your finger in there because it's not steaming, it's off the fire. It is when you dip your finger in, you see how hot it still is. The perceived silence from that quarter is not resignation. It's not abandonment of their issues. The truth of the matter is that in the political circles, there's a lot of rumbling. There's a lot of consultations going on around. And all of this will increase as the build-up to 2019 continues. So it would be naive for even the ruling party to assume that that ultimatum was a storm in the teacup. I can assure you that it was not.
Okay, we'll take our first break on the program, Politics Today, on independent television and radio. And that's because it's a simulcast both on television and on radio. And then, of course, you can also follow us live on our live stream via our website, www.itvradioNigeria.com. We're also streaming on Facebook, facebook.com/ITVRadioNG. Follow us on our Twitter handle at ITVRadioNG. We'll follow you back. Post a comment there, we'll share it. Follow me on my personal Twitter handle at Duke Coast, and I'll follow you back. If you post a comment there, so we'll share it as well. But once again, we thank you for joining us on Politics Today on Independent Television and Radio. My guest has been the Executive Director, Foundation for Good Governance and Social Change, Comrade Austin Osakwe. Comrade, many thanks again for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Well, just reflecting on the congresses held, well, you said a while ago that even those who were dissatisfied with the system, they have something up their sleeves, and probably it will take a little while for that to materialize. We've always talked about the issue of opposition in a democracy, and then, of course, the quality of that opposition in a democracy. I'm sure on May 29, which is Tuesday next week, we're going to be celebrating Democracy Day, uninterrupted democracy practice in Nigeria for the last couple of years since 1999. Let's look at opposition and strengthening democracy.
Well, we must situate the quality of opposition within our political hemisphere exactly within the framework of our mentality and temperament as a people. Opposition thrives partly because those in power recognize the relevance of opposition in driving governance. That's how it is globally. What you find is that the debates generated by the contestation between those in government, those in power, and those in opposition is what stimulates growth and development. In midst of these contestations and debates, quality advice, quality directions, quality suggestions, quality alternatives are presented to those in power to drive governance. So all over the world, opposition is not seen as an enemy, but opposition for what it is. However, in Africa, particularly in Nigeria, opposition is first and foremost the enemy. Opposition stands for no good. Whenever opposition speaks, it is to bring government down. This is the mentality of the average Nigerian contestant in politics. But you must ask the question, what has opposition done to justify this impression? A lot. Because you can be in power today and tomorrow you are in opposition. So, opposition, again in Africa, has not been qualitative enough to push not only those in government, but the electorates themselves to value that opposition and flow with it. Okay. What should opposition do? I'll give you an example. In the First and Second Republic, the late Chief Jeremiah Oyeniyi of Bafemi Awolowo was a foremost opposition figure. In fact, he had become synonymous with opposition. What was his attitude to government? Yes, he always was ahead of those in government. When there was going to be austerity, when austerity was ravaging the entire globe, he was the first to point it out in Nigeria and pointed it out to government. And of course, the response of the Shagari administration at that time was to advise him not to bother himself, that there were enough economic gurus in government to attend to his fears. But we all knew that a few months later, Nigeria was reeling in the worst austerity at that time. What was Obafemi Awolowo's approach to opposition politics? First, he groomed leaders. Two, he embarked upon research into even the policies of government to present credible and superior alternatives and put at the doorstep of those in government for the good of the people. It wasn't to destroy. Every time he addressed an issue, he presented a credible and superior alternative to the people and the government. Three, opposition must present something that will be better than those they criticize. So it is not criticism for criticism's sake. It's not cynicism. It's not skepticism. Criticism differs from cynicism and skepticism. In cynicism, you see nothing good in government. In skepticism, you doubt everything, every step that government takes. That's not good opposition. What criticism does is to examine what government is doing, present what it is doing right, and also present the shortcomings. Okay. And then go ahead through research and superior knowledge and capacity, provide an alternative to cover up for those shortcomings. That is lacking in the Nigerian opposition. Because the Nigerian and the African opposition is just there waiting for the end of the tenure to grab power for power's sake. And I ask the opposition in Nigeria, what leadership do they groom? The PDP today, we can see it as the foremost opposition to the APC in government. Yeah. And I have come out to say openly that PDP is not a better alternative to the APC. The Nigerians must come together and look for something fresh to replace both the PDP and APC. Why do I say so? APC has been in power for 3 years. Apart from bickering, apart from occasional statements issued by the PDP criticizing what the APC has done or is doing, what superior alternative have they placed before the people of Nigeria? The cries that we hear among Nigerians is a cry against spiraling unemployment, a cry against increasing poverty, a cry against a debilitating low in power supply, a cry against palpable insecurity in the land. These are the things that Nigerians are crying about. What alternative has PDP presented in black and white to show to Nigeria that if we get into power now, these are the things we are going to present, these are the things we are going to implement that will solve the problems that you are crying about? What we hear is that they should live there, we are coming to take over. And that for me is not quality opposition. In the democratic Nigeria, opposition has been very low in quality, and the government in power hardly takes opposition seriously. Neither do Nigerians.
Where is the role of the civil society in this matrix of opposition? What is the role of the civil society?
The civil society, unfortunately, is being regarded by many as a critique of government, as an opposition to government. It's not true. It's not so. The civil society is a third leg of the tripod on which governance and indeed the polity rests. We have government representing the public sector. We have big business representing, of course, those who invest their money for profit maximization. Okay. Civil society is mistaken by many, and I think I need to use the opportunity to identify exactly what civil society is. Civil society refers to that uncoerced space where you have people who are neither in government nor in big business. They are actually the recipients of government policies. They are the receiving end of bad policies in business, of wrong business ethics, which means what we call civil society today is actually every Nigerian who is neither in government nor in big business. It is all of us. But what you find, the likes of Osakwe, for instance, will decide that to represent this uncoerced space, we need to set up certain organizations. Those organizations are important because they will have a legal framework. Two, they will have membership who can stand in the gap to represent this large group of people. That's what we refer to as civil society organizations. Okay. But when Nigerians talk, they refer to these few people who are in this organization as civil society. No, the people who are pointing these fingers are actually part of the civil society. The church, the mosque, the families, the workers, the unemployed, the physically challenged, all of them are within the civil society. But you have civil society organizations which are set up as a tool, as a mechanism to mobilize this uncoerced group for self-protection, to engage government, How do we engage government? Not to bring government down. First, to look at government policies. And from a superior point of knowledge and understanding and capacity, provide alternatives to what government is doing. 2, monitor what they are doing to ensure that there is transparency and there's accountability. That's what we do. And then we look at how do we defend these people, this uncoerced space called civil society. We say they have certain rights. These rights are inalienable. They were given to them by God. Any attempt to take away these rights, we are there to ensure that we intervene.
How has civil society live up to its expectation in being able to bridge the gap between government and the big businesses? Because some say even civil society has really not fared in trying to bridge this gap. In some instances, you find them consumed either by the big business or consumed by government.
I must say that the question is also akin to the question people ask. People point at the church and say, what is the church doing? The church is just, pastors are just making money. And I tell them, also ask yourself, if the church wasn't there at all, what would the situation be?
Really?
It's like people who say education is expensive. And we say, try ignorance. Civil society cannot beat its chest today that it has lived up to the billing that is set for itself. But like I said, the civil society is the generality of the people. Civil society organizations are hampered by the same problems that confront the people. Why do civil society organizations succeed and do well in other countries? For instance, people may not know, governments of big countries, they set money aside for use by civil society. Because they realize that the work that civil society is doing is complementing what government does. Okay. Civil society is not opposition. Some people say, oh, this civil society, they just write proposal, they just collect money, they just begin to live big. And I say, fine. You also now write proposal and collect money and begin to live big. The money they are talking about, which is funding, actually comes from individuals. If you get money from the US, for instance, the money is donated by individuals. $1, 50 cents, 30 cents, $2. That's how they put it together. And then government also gives its part. Okay. Then that money is given out by an organization to civil society groups that are working in third world countries for the upliftment of the standards of living of the people. But why do you expect people to bring money from the US to come and work for you here when you yourself have not identified the need to support the groups that are fighting for you here? I'll give you an example. Teachers have common problems that is common to all of them. When these problems are on, they will identify 1 or 2 civil society organizations and say, come and fight for us. And I keep asking them, these people you are asking to leave their homes, buy fuel, drive to you, move to go and source for documents. Is it
the teachers now or the government?
I'm giving you an example.
Okay.
How much do you put into their work? What of workers? What of other disadvantaged groups? The point I'm making, sir, is that civil society organizations are funded by groups whose interests they fight for. Are you getting what I'm saying? Yeah. But here, we believe, says, go and collect money from abroad and bring it to come and fight for us. And I said, no. Number 2 is that civil society itself is faced by the insufficient capacity. A lot of us, many of us didn't go to school.
In the civil society movement?
Yes. Just as you have in government.
Okay. No, I wasn't saying anything about that.
The way you have it in government, you have it in business. So our capacity is directly proportional to our level of effectiveness. How, for instance, do you want to provide an alternative to a policy of government when you don't even understand that policy? How do you monitor government's policy and implementation when you don't know the first thing about what they are doing? So a lot of civil society organizations need to build their capacity. And in any case, sir, if we want civil society to function well, that is, those of us outside government and big business, we need more capable people to come into it. And I am gladdened that we now have civil society organizations that are being run by first-class products of universities, professors, lecturers, even business people. Okay. People who have capacity, lawyers, doctors, they are setting up groups. For those who want to know what civil society does, anywhere you go and you find that there's a free eye test and it's not government that is doing it, there's civil society working there. When you see an awareness program about cancer, about sickle cell anemia, people are giving out mosquito nets, it is civil society that is working there. Anywhere you see somebody is arrested in the police station and bail, which is supposed to be free, is no longer free and money is being demanded. Some of us get phone calls and we rush there. That's civil society working. When you see people visit prisons, when you see people give birth in hospitals and they are not able to get money to pay even in government hospitals, and some people come and they pay for them and get the children out, that's civil society working.
Politically, democratically, how has civil society fared?
Well, unfortunately, there has been this moot point about whether civil society practitioners should participate in politics. I have my personal opinion on that. Okay. My personal opinion is that the business of governance is too serious, it's too important to be left in the hands of politicians alone. So my general answer to that, my own opinion, is that any civil society practitioner who believes first and foremost that he has the capacity, he has something to offer, he can do it better than those who are in government right now, should make himself available. And if we can find, if society can find that such persons have the integrity and they have the capacity, society will support them. So there is nothing that says you are in civil society, you cannot participate in politics, because all it takes for evil to thrive is for good people to just fold their arms and do nothing. And if you say you will not participate in politics when you have the capacity, you suffer the rule of fools. And there are many fools out there who want to rule.
Okay.
So essentially, sir, all those non-governmental organizations, community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, they are all within the ambit of civil society, and they are giving their all. There are those who are fighting for gender equity, let's face it. Just a few days ago, I think, female lawmakers went to visit the president and said, look, we want positions, we want more women to be involved. They are doing that, even though I see it as tokenism and playing to the gallery. That's a matter for another day. Absolutely. But I do believe that a society that relegates women to the background is a society that is unwilling to grow. And you have civil society that are just
focused on that.
Equity between gender, equity for physically challenged. Another huge group that is being left out. So essentially, sir, the complete answer to the question is that we have not fared as much as we would have loved to, but there is still a lot of room, and the work is getting harder, is getting bigger, and more qualified and capable persons are coming within the sector.
What's your take on the performance rating level of democratic practice? I mean, since we transited from the military rule to civilian under this dispensation, what has been, what has it been like for you in terms of your assessment of performance as a system of government, democracy as it were?
It will amount to playing the ostrich for anyone to say that we have not fared well. There have been a lot of progress made in our democratic practice. Number one, the right to the various freedoms that exist in the Constitution are no longer just written, they are now practical.
Okay.
To the extent that even the president himself will tell you, I'm not as powerful as you think, I can't just do this. It's in recognition of the fact that we are operating a constitutional democracy. That for me is already a plus. A lot of the activism today, a lot of the limited openness that is taking place, a lot of the areas of restructuring that we are finding today are all products of this democratic practice. But the question is, have we done as much as we would have loved to do?
You answer that question in a moment. Let's take calls. 052-290-573. That's the studio number. Tell us your name, where you're calling from, then go ahead with your contribution. 052-290-573. That's the studio number. Hello, caller. Good morning. Yes, Bishop from Sabungida Ora. Don't bother introducing yourself. I've done that. Just go ahead. All right. Okay.
Back to this issue of your group, that is groups, civil society. I think they have done a lot as far as I'm concerned. Because without civil society, I'm telling you now that we will be having problems that will have been very, very detrimental to our society.
Okay.
Oftentimes, they bring all the house in order to ensure that things work out well. My appeal to the people of Edo State is that all able-bodied people, every person who knows that he has what it is to be a member of civil society, should be part and parcel of it. And I would suggest that there should be a common account in which people can voluntarily pay money into,
okay, so
that the civil society can strive well.
Okay.
Thank you. God bless all of you.
Thank you, Bishop Isha from Sabungida Ora. The studio line is still 052290573. Just before the call starts coming in, you said no.
So an assessment of how far we have gone politically, how well we have done.
Yes.
It's also related to our level of development as a people.
Okay.
Democracy can hardly thrive in an atmosphere of ignorance.
Just a moment. Hello, caller. Good morning. Because you're live now, we'll take you right away. Hello, good morning.
Hello?
Yes, tell us your name and where you're calling from. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Tony Duke.
Yes, good morning.
My name is St. Peter. I'm calling from Ubo in Village.
Go ahead, St. Peters.
I want to put in my little contribution on the program.
Go ahead,
I'm starting with the issue of opposition.
Yeah.
You know, all over the world, opposition is a very able tool in acting as check and balances, as well as putting government on its toes. You know, where there is no opposition, there will be an end to everything. As government in power will become autocratic and rule arbitrarily. If truly enshrine, the fear of opposition is the beginning of wisdom for government in power. The role of opposition cannot be overemphasized. For instance, it is a convention that the chairman of Public Account Committee in the British Parliament is always from the opposition party. And this trend have crept into various democracies all over the world.
Okay.
It is my humble appeal to government in power not to cripple the civil society. All these reforms and vindictive persecution should stop.
Okay.
But on the issue of party primaries, I want to commend Edo State APC thus far. However, it is my humble submission that party leaders should allow the rule of law and national interest to come first in all they do. Thank you very much for giving me the audience.
Thank you, St. Patrick's. Well spoken, the thoughts that you shared. Yes, comrade.
So, if you have a society where there is so much ignorance and so much poverty, it's difficult for democracy to thrive. In fact, the poverty and ignorance are killers of democracy. The reason being that for there to be democracy, there must be participation. In fact, democracy is best expressed through participation.
Okay.
And people cannot participate from a point of view of confidence and neutrality if they are largely poor. It's all over the place that in a lot of the elections that have been held, people just simply wait the election day and go and offer as little as 2,000 naira for people to sell their votes. Why are people selling their votes? Poverty is involved, but it's not just poverty. Poverty because there are people, there are millions of Nigerians who see that 2,000 naira as the be-all and end-all. You may argue that when you eat the 2,000 is gone. They are not listening to that. That's for the future. They are looking at now, how do I cook soup now? How do I buy garri now for the children? But I said that's not enough. Because the other side is that there are those who are not poor, who are not dying, who still accept to sell their votes. That's where ignorance comes in.
Okay.
People do not understand today that the resources at the disposal of government to be used for the people actually belong to the people. So that's why you find that when a government goes to commission a project, and what is this project? They want to give wheelbarrows to youths to go and do any load in the marketplace. They call television stations, they call media to come and cover them. And then everybody is saying, they are hailing them. The truth of the matter is that if you were to assess them, yes, number one, the money they spent belongs to the people.
Yeah.
Number two, that in itself, that gesture is an insult to the people. So essentially, what you require for democracy to thrive is education of the people. The people must be educated, they must be enlightened so that they can play their part.
So political education.
Yes, beyond political education, sir. Education first and foremost,
okay.
Then political education.
Okay.
In fact, the reason those in government do what they do is because they know that the people cannot tell the difference. They know that when the time comes, they will use poverty as a tool and play on the ignorance of the people to get their way through.
Okay, you're live on the program Politics Today on independent television and radio, 052-290-573. That's the studio number. If you're listening to us on radio or you're watching on television, dial it with that number. Hello, caller, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, please tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Hello, good morning.
Go ahead, we can hear you loud and clear. Just go on.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Pastor Peter from Benin.
Pastor Peter, go ahead, please.
All right. I want to contribute. Good morning. Hello.
Go ahead, we can hear you. Just go ahead, please.
As regard to the opposition talk in Nigeria.
Okay.
All right. The reason why opposition in Nigeria particularly cannot thrive very well is simply because we have a dictator, the tyrant, as the president. When they try to carry out their responsibility as opposition, they use police, army, EFCC, and all the security architecture to frame them up and deal with them. For example, look at Pastor Daniel and we can.
All right, we are going off track now. We're going off track. You're going off track, so we have to take you off. You're going off track. We are going off track. We advocate that we play down on names on this program. So when you start calling names, the people, whether positive or negative, they're not here just now for them to respond to the issue. But you raised a very key point, which of course I'd like Comrade Austin Sokwe to also share some thoughts on. But let's have our next caller. Hello, caller. Good morning. Please tell us your name.
My name is Desmond.
Yes, Desmond, go ahead. Okay, Desmond is not willing to speak. So someone just raised the issue of those perceived to be opposition being cowed and then of course being prosecuted or persecuted as the case may be. Is this a major challenge in our democratic practice?
I think it is, and it's also a reflection of our level of development, like I mentioned.
Yeah.
Those in government want to remain in government, and anybody who attempts to want to take their place is an enemy.
Okay.
And in Africa, you don't give up on your enemy until you see him enter the mortuary. Even while he's in the mortuary, you stay by the door in case he wakes up.
Okay.
So you use the hammer, you use everything.
Okay.
That's why many say that the EFCC and other agencies of government are there to hound opposition. But that's not 100% the case. There are people today who are vociferously critical of government, and they have not been visitors at the EFCC and the ICPC. First and foremost really is that those who go to equity must go with clean hands. And part of going to equity is to boldly confront the powers in government. If your hands are not clean, I mean, there is a saying among our people that if you live in a glass house, don't throw stones. Okay. So government can only hound opposition that is suspect, opposition whose hands are not clean. So what that also means, it throws us back to what is the quality of opposition that we are having. I expect, for instance, that yes, the Nigerian situation is such that it's difficult to go through government for 4 years and not have soiled your fingers. That has become the order of the day. But if it is true that those agencies were designed for such a thing, that's why we have the courts. The EFCC cannot be accuser and judge at the same time. Yeah. So people should know that they will have their day in court.
So it brings us back to the level of education, awareness, and information at our disposal.
Yes.
Okay, on a final note, maybe your parting shot, 2019, yeah, the issues are still there?
Well, I have often said, I shy away from stamping my personal preferences when I'm on a public platform like this. It will not be too fair.
Okay.
But just to mention that in 2019, the issues will be very clear. We are going to have a party that has been there for 4 years. By the time we are holding elections, almost 4 years, the people can now rate that party against the background of the promises that they made and the yearnings and aspirations of Nigerians. And Nigerians will cast a vote for that party if, in their estimation, this party has lived up to its promises. We also have opposition. Some tried before, there will be fresh ones in view of the third force that's coming. So Nigerians are going to look at this based on issues. Nigerians will assess the candidates outside the party. Some consideration will be given to parties, but I think that a major part of the consideration will be to the individuals. We need individuals who are not clannish, who are not coming to represent an ethnic group or a religion or family members. It will also be somebody who realizes that the moment he becomes president, Nigeria becomes his constituency. Number two, we need a Nigerian who has the capacity, not the one who will give excuses. We don't want the government that will come after APC if APC does not remain in power to be saying Buhari spoiled the thing too much, that's why we are not able to fix it. So we need to let them know now. You must have the capacity to come and change that which is on ground.
All right, thank you very much, Sir Comrade Austin Osakwe, Executive Director of Foundation for Good Governance and Social Change. This is where we draw the curtains on the program today, Politics Today, on independent television and radio. We thank all our viewers and all our listeners from across the world. We thank you for your participation. Be sure to join us next week, Saturday. A fresh edition of the program is in the offing. Till then, stay blessed and bye for now.